Right now, I am in northern Poland. And a few years ago, I was contacted by Andrew Biggio, who's the author of The Rifle and The Rifle II, about accompanying him and documenting the experience of bringing some World War II veterans back to the battlefield. And since then, I've been with him to Germany and Belgium, to Normandy, back to Bastogne for the 80th anniversary. And one of the veterans who accompanied us on the 80th anniversary trip to Bastogne was a man by the name of Lester Schrenk, who was a ball turret gunner in a B-17, was shot down and was captured by the Germans. And today, we are bringing Lester back to the place where he was held as a prisoner at Stalag Luft IV.
So right now we're at the infamous receiving center of Stalag Luft IV. Many POWs, including Lester, remember this place because it was a very violent and extreme wake-up call for being a POW. They were forced off the trains, intimidated by German shepherds barking at them and nipping at them, and from here they were in a forced sprint to the rest of the camp. If you fell out of the run, you got stabbed by a bayonet. If you fell out of formation, you got bit by a police dog. So this was a very, very extreme place, and just the beginning of the hell that he was going to experience over the next 15 months as a POW, and before his death march through Germany. We'll head that way.
Can you tell me about going to Stalag Luft VI, what your memories are of that place?
Yes, it was the middle of the winter. Our clothes were very inadequate, and we were starved on our way to Frankfurt. We had been no, I can't even interrogated at Frankfurt, and we took a train ride to Stalag Luft VI, which was near Memel, East Prussia. And the whole thing was miserable because all along the way we got very minimal to eat, and of course, cold as the devil, no heat. We were in a boxcar all the way. They moved us from Stalag Luft to Stalag Luft IV because the Russian army was threatening to take over where our camp was. We had been on the coal ship for 4.5 days, haven't had anything to eat or drink. We were in absolute misery when we got here.
What are your memories of showing up here at the train station?
Well, I think I just told you.
Oh, okay. But, so, I mean, for somebody who wasn't here to see it, like, what was it, what did it look like, you know?
The only thing I remember is the woods along the pathway where they had the Heidekrug Run. And the Heidekrug Run was, they shackled us and gave us each a Red Cross parcel to have under our arms, and then started chasing us down the road with dogs and bayonets. And of course, the only reason they gave us the Red Cross parcels, they wanted us to drop them, and that way they could say that we didn't want them and we threw them away.
Did you have any close calls with those German police dogs nipping at you?
I did not, because I had presence of mind to stay in the middle of the group. It's the ones that were on the outside that bore the brunt of the police dogs nipping at them. One guy had 60 puncture wounds from being either bitten or jabbed with a bayonet.
How many people arrived at these days? Do you have an idea of the number of people?
In our group, it would have been about 1,500 people, but they had broken us into different groups.
And do you know how many made it in the camp?
Even our own government doesn't know.
So a lot of them didn't survive the camp.
They survived the camp, but didn't survive the death march.
Thank you.
The only ones that in the camp, I remember a number of them getting shot.
Even they were prisoners of war.
Yes.
Here at the site of this train station, there is a memorial that has been erected to the memory of the men who came through this camp. So here it says 10,000 Americans and Allied POWs walked along the Trail up Tiers from Kiefheide railway station to Luft IV POW camp between May of 1944 and February of 1945. So from right here at this train station, Lester's ordeal would have just begun at Stalag Luft IV. So we're going to hop in our vehicles now and go back to the site where this airman was held as a prisoner of the Germans at the end of World War II. We have made our way down the road, and we are currently standing at the site of Stalag Luft IV. So this is the place where Les was brought after leaving Stalag Luft VI. And there's a little ceremony and a wreath laying that we are going to have here at the monument. And then we're going to see if we can get Les back here in this area to talk about some of his memories from his time here at this POW camp.
Ladies and gentlemen, if we can stand by for the playing of taps. 3, set, on! Order.
We just finished the wreath laying ceremony, and I wanted to take a moment to show this absolutely beautiful monument that they have here at the site of Stalag Luft IV. So here in front of us, we see this downed airman. He's got his parachute across his shoulder, showing that he has just landed. And then here it says prisoner of war camp. The Allied Airmen, 1944 to 1945. And then you can kind of see this image of this eagle that has been etched into the stone. And then over on this side, well, here is a layout of Stalag Luft IV. So Les was in barracks number 2, which was right here. So he was in this part of the camp. And then following his time here at Stalag Luft IV, as the Soviet army was making their way into Germany, well, the men of this camp were rounded up and sent west ahead of the Soviet army. So this right here is depicting what became known as the Death March. Many have heard of the Bataan Death March. Well, there was a death march here in Europe at the end of the war as well. And Les said that, in looking at this, he said they didn't have scarves and they didn't have hats. So they were marching in the cold without any of those luxuries. And then just a few more things here on this memorial. It reads May 1944 to February 1945, basically Stalag Luft IV here in Tyshof, where 10,000 American, Canadian, British, French, Belgian, Australian, Polish, Russian, and other airmen were kept prisoners of war. On February the 6th, 1945, the camp was evacuated by the Death March to Stalag 11B, from where prisoners were liberated on May the 2nd. Now, there were a couple of different groups that went out of here. Les was not part of the group that ended up at Stalag 11B. He was going to be liberated basically in a field, which he may talk about later. And then also here they have some of these stones on the ground with the names of some of the men who were held here with Les. Men like Clemens, C.J. Rosen. Yeah, this is something else. So I've made my way back over into the woods, and the area where I'm at right now would have been the central part of the camp. So I've got a few things that we're going to show. A lot of the camp, of course, is gone and wiped out, but there are a few remnants of the camp that is still here that I'm going to show. And then I think we're going to get Les back here to talk about some of his memories. As we've already mentioned, at the time that Les was here, this all would have been open field. So we have to use our imaginations a little bit. There were, of course, no woods here in the area. But here in the middle, well, there's a little cleared out zone. And right here in this spot, you can see some of this brick rubble. This was the site of barracks number 2. And this is the barracks that Les was housed in during his time here at Stalag Luft IV. And then earlier, I was talking to him, and he told me this story about a reservoir here in the camp that they would use in case of a fire. Well, if we go up here, that reservoir that he remembered was right next to his barracks. And I'll see if I can get him to recount the story later, but he told me a story about a couple of guys who decided to take a swim in this one day and got in a little bit of trouble from the guards. So amazing to be here and to walk this ground with one of the guys who lived through this experience. Now again, many of the structures here at the camp are no longer with us, but there are still a few remnants. Here is another one. So we are kind of in the area of where the kitchen was, here in the middle of the camp. And this structure right here, you can maybe kind of think of as like a root cellar or something. So they would store vegetables, potatoes, things like that here in this part of the camp, again near the kitchen. And then if we go off in this direction just a little bit, let me make my way through some of this brush. Well, right here is some remains of the sewage system that was part of the camp.
Wait a minute, the tank I thought was above the... I remember this, but I thought it was up above the ground. But I remember this very well.
You said there were some guys who got in trouble for swimming in this thing?
Yes, they peeled off their clothes and went swimming, and of course the German guards got them out just about as quick. Right. Oh, come on, I'm not getting a picture.
I got it, Les.
This is part of the barracks.
Could be the barracks floor, maybe something.
It must have been. The barracks stood on blocks about that high, so that at night they would run dogs under the barracks.
Pod barakami. Czyli tu by wychodziło, według moich informacji, że stąd pobierali posiłki, bo tu kuchnia była też
So for his
paczki Czerwonego
research,
Krzyża.
tu była kuchnia, teraz jesteśmy?
tak.
The place where we are, there was a kitchen when you get your food.
Okay.
So that might be this what he find and research on this place. So this is a place for a kitchen.
Yep.
Przeciwpożarowy basen jest tam,
And
po
the
lewej stronie
swimming
będzie barak numer
and
2.
this fire was there,
Over there.
the
right?
tank, and the barrack number 2.
Here. It's tamta polanka.
And this
That way.
That way, yeah.
Okay.
Tu jest miejsce, tu były ogromne kotły, bo tutaj pracowaliśmy archeologicznie, to
And
tutaj
they were doing some archaeological research, and there was a place where there was a big steamers to cook it over here when you are now
Oh, yeah.
standing.
Les, can you tell me what your memories are of first arriving in the camp?
Well, I remember it wasn't very pleasant. You were constantly hungry, and of course in the wintertime you were also freezing you down. And of course another thing was boredom. You had absolutely nothing to do.
Were there ever any escape attempts from this camp?
I believe that there were a couple of them, yes. I remember a couple of guys trying to climb the wall. They were both shot. I also remember we had to put shutters on windows and weren't allowed out. I believe it was from about 3 in the afternoon until about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. And one time, one of the guys, the guards had stolen all our watches, so you didn't have any idea what time it was. One time, one guy got up, apparently a little bit early, went to wash in the latrine, and when he came back, the guard shot him because he was a few minutes early.
Can you describe how the camp looked? Because it looks a lot different now.
Well, there was absolutely no trees anywhere near the camp. The trees had all been cleared for almost as far as your eye could see to prevent any type of escape. And of course, there was high barbed wire fences that had wire entanglement between 2 rows of them. So, if I remember it, the height of the wall were about 15 feet. So there was no successful escape from either Stalag Luft VI or Stalag Luft IV.
Was there a certain... I'm sorry. Yeah, is that
Look out.
Please.
Careful, yes.
Was there a special, most terrible moment during your time here? Do you remember?
Most terrible moment. There were all most terrible moments. I don't remember ever being a good moment.
What was the most painful thing?
Most painful thing was hunger. You were constantly hungry.
What kept your strength?
My faith in God, for one, and the other one, my parents didn't want me to enlist, and I had promised my mother that I would make it back home safely, and I relied on that promise, and I think that helped me get through.
Were you able to write letters home?
It's the first part of the war, yes. They gave us, we could write 2 letters and 6 postcards, but they were all ruled off with great big spaces, and you had to write in block letters, or if you said anything wrong, of course, it never reached its destination. And they were censored by both German and even American censors.
But did they reach your parents? Was there any letter or postcard reaching your parents from here?
Yes, they received a number of them, not a lot, but they didn't receive I was shot down in February, and if I remember right, it was about May when they received the first, I can't remember the card or a letter from me.
Yeah, but they knew that you were alive, and yeah.
Yes, but our own government, I could never forgive them. The minute I was shot down, they sent word to my parents that I was missing in action. They never, ever bothered to tell my parents that I was either captured or liberated. When I had a girlfriend in England, and when she had gotten a postcard from me, and she's the one that informed my parents that I was alive, or if it wouldn't have been for her, they wouldn't even known it until quite a bit later.
How did you leave the camp?
On foot. Is that what you mean?
Can you describe the scene? Yeah.
It was a blinding snowstorm. They had given us, I believe it was 2-hour notice that we were evacuating the camp. And we, like I said, it was a blinding snowstorm and very inadequate clothing.
Did you hear the front line already? Did you hear the Red Army?
Yes. First you could see flashes of light, but like I said, we had shutters on the doors and windows, but through the cracks you could actually see the flash of light, and then later on you could hear the roar of cannon. So I have no idea how close they were, but I would say they were perhaps within 20 miles.
So were there any guards here at the camp that stand out in your memory?
Ham hands. He was the most brutal guard you could imagine. He was with us both at Stalag Luft VI and Stalag Luft IV. He was brute of a man, about, I would say, 6'5", 6", but he was kind of a hunched over, so, but stood out about him, he must have been used to very hard labor because the size of his hands were just humongous. He would sneak up behind you and take his rifle butt and stamp on your arch, trying to break your arches. Other times he'd come up behind you and cuff his hand and trying to break your eardrums. That's the type of person he was.
So, Les, I teach high school students. Can you describe what the Death March was?
The Death March was a march to nowhere. Some of the luckier units were put in with other camps, but when we got to the camp that we were supposed to go to, it was so crowded we couldn't even get in the gate. For 2 or 3 days we slept outside the gate, and they finally resumed the Death March, and it was a march to nowhere. It was a march between the Russian front and the Allied front, with no end in sight. Well, some of the guys, we didn't leave camps all in one big group. They broke us into different units, and the ones that left camp first were lucky enough to get a Red Cross parcel, but we didn't. And I can't remember how far they marched us the first day. I remember it being very miserable. Like I said, it was the middle of a snowstorm. My shoes were so worn out that I could see my toes without even taking my shoes off.
Where did you sleep then during the march?
On the ground.
Just
Well, there were two different types. If you were lucky, you slept in some farmer's barn. If the other times, they would say, "Here's where we bed down the night." It could be out in the plowed field.
how many days did you march then?
86.
And how did the march end finally for you?
We were at a farmer's barn, and when we woke up in the morning, we were told we're not going to march today. And we couldn't understand why, because that was real unusual.
Who told you that?
One of the German guards. I was the interpreter, so he told me, and I related it to the other guys. And about mid-morning, we saw a contingent holding a white flag coming down the road, and it was English liberating our camp. They liberated us, but they were chasing Germans, and they told us that we had a march to their outpost, which I think was 21 kilometers away. And at that time, that was an awful long ways for anybody to march in our condition.
And that was the end of the war for you?
Yes, that was the end of the war, right.
Do you know how much you weighed upon your liberation?
When I was shot down, I weighed 185 pounds. when I was liberated, I weighed 93, but I had already been liberated for, must have been almost about 3 weeks before they even give it the least bit of a physical.
Lester, as you stand here in your former prisoner of war camp, was there one meal that you couldn't wait to eat when you got home? Was there a particular food on your mind, or was it just...
When we were real starved, we would lay in bed thinking about food, and it was always something real rich that it wouldn't be like bread and potatoes. It would be like ice cream or chocolate cake or something like that. That's what we would dream about. Boy, I'm surprised at how fast the wood grew back.
This is one of my greatest accomplishments with bringing veterans over. I've never taken a veteran back to his former prisoner of war camp. It's a whole different perspective and different feeling, honestly.
I appreciate it very much.
No, thank you.
I appreciate going to Hawaii even more.
This guy and his Hawaii trip.